Good morning. I am Steve Weber, and welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show being broadcast here on Spirituality Gone Wild. Today is Monday, November 23rd. Hey, it's Thanksgiving week. That's kind of cool. I always liked Thanksgiving week because it was like a short week, you know. I mean, how many other weeks of the year do you only get to go to work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then you had Thursday and Friday off? Or at least that was the way it was from school. And then most of the official jobs that I had over the years, they worked that same way. Thursday and Friday was always a holiday. Now, of course, there's lots of people who didn't have Friday off. They had to go to work on Friday, and that was just, so it was like that weird week still. But anyway, it was always a great week for me. I loved it. So Thanksgiving week. Now, having said that, I'm planning to broadcast 5 days this week. I'm planning to do a show tomorrow and Wednesday. And on Thursday, Thanksgiving, I'm going to at least do a little bit of a throwback Thursday and talk about my Thanksgivings. And I got an idea for a couple of guests. I have to convince some family members to come on board, and maybe we'll have some fun with that. Probably be a little bit of a shorter show than normal, but we'll see what happens. But I'm planning to go live Thursday, Thanksgiving, and then Friday right back to work, and I have a guest scheduled then. So now today I do not have a guest, and today I got a pretty cool monologue that I'm going to do. So that will be that's all that we're going to do today. I always say like 20 or 30 minutes, and then I go like 35 or 40 minutes. I kind of think it's only going to be 20 to 30 minutes. We'll see. So anyway, that's my intention, is to, be out of here by about half past the hour. Now, coming up. Oh, so what is the monologue? Yeah, I might as well tease you with that, tell you what it's all about. So it's basically using virtual meeting technology to tell a story. And really, the idea came to me based on the fact that I've been doing shows, 5 days a week, more or less, for the last 4 months. And so today's show number 75, and we started on August 3rd. And so anyway, I've decided that there's an opportunity and there's a way to use this technology to advance your business. So that's what my monologue is going to be. It's titled Using Virtual Meeting Technology to Tell a Story. How's that for a title? Using virtual meeting technology to tell a story. All right. So it's really about advancing your business. All right. So tomorrow, upcoming guest, Ed Barr. Ed Barr and I went to grade school together. We met in the first grade, but that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to, Ed is an environmental services expert, and Ed has been posting on LinkedIn for the last several years, an article a day, sometimes two a day, and he's got themes. And the two main themes that I can mention off the top of my head are the environment, things concerned about, like recycling, about repurposing things, like taking what we produce and not just throwing it into landfills, but making the world a environmentally more friendly place. That's his main theme. The second one is U.S. history, and he has all kinds of, and maybe even world history, but basically U.S. history, and then he's got a couple of other categories that we'll get into, but that's what we're going to talk about. Just the fact that this guy comes up with these articles day after day after day, and it's awesome, and I love it. So that's tomorrow. Ed Barr. Wednesday, Stacy Redfield. Stacy is the author of The Pilates Effect, and I finished reading the book yesterday. Over the weekend, I read the book, and fascinating story about Joe Pilates and the fact that he helped so many people over his career that he created this whole first generation of people who loved what he was doing and ended up carrying it on. And then that generation ended up spawning what it ultimately, the industry became. So we'll go through that whole story. It's like starts in the 1920s, I think, when Joe came from Germany and set up shop or maybe the 30s, set up shop in New York City. And anyway, so that'll be on Wednesday. We'll talk to Stacy about that. Thursday, it's kind of a throwback Thursday, Thanksgiving, story of, Thanksgiving, what it was for me growing up as in the Weber household and as a child, what I remember about it. And we have some great archive pictures that I'll share. So that'll be on Thursday. And if I can convince a family member or two to show up, then that's what's going to happen. And if not, I'll do it solo. Friday, Brian Quinn, author of brand new book, Crush Your Career, about getting a resume, about going through the interviewing process, about, getting getting your resume together, getting an interview, going through the interviewing process, your first year on the job. He is a military guy, got out of like 28 years in one of the armed services. I forget which branch, but he will remind me on Friday. And he had to go look for a job. And this is back in, I think, 2012, 13, 14 timeframe. And just from that whole experience, he ended up, being inspired to write a book so that other people can benefit from it. So that's on Friday. And I have got a guest on Monday and Tuesday, but next week, but we'll worry about that later on in the week. All righty. So that's it. Now, I didn't have the Spirituality Gone Wild banner up at the beginning of the show, which then I would switch it to the American Gumption banner now that I'm about to shift into the monologue segment of the show. Alrighty. So my monologue today is, using virtual meeting technology to tell a story. Here's what happened. COVID showed up at the beginning of the year. In case you haven't been paying attention, COVID started back in February, March. March is when it all blew up and everything changed. It was like rumored for a month before that everything was going to change, but it all happened in March. I know that because I was out in an RV driving around in Washington and Oregon right when that happened. So anyway, so this year, everything changed and we started using virtual meetings. And I'm going to just say virtual meetings went mainstream. Before this year, virtual meetings were clearly being used. Zoom was being used. It was all happening, but it was kind of like, baby step, baby step, baby step. And there was a lot of technology issues that were, considered not really acceptable. Meetings cracking up, people talking, but no sound being heard, different sound levels, somebody sounding like they're in an echo chamber, screens freezing up, people disappearing, that whole thing. And I don't know that it radically changed, although I believe Zoom, we'll just refer to Zoom as the main technology. They actually, stepped up and they put some things in place. And so I think it's working a little bit better. I don't know that for sure. But what has changed is that people got used to the fact that it was imperfect. And so rather than it being this like unacceptable, like irritating, annoying thing, it just sort of like, okay, that's part of the way it works and that's the way it goes. And then people got used to working from home and it turned out people were actually more productive working at home and you didn't have to spend time driving. So suddenly it was like, oh my gosh, this whole working at home thing, this works pretty darn good. And this virtual meeting technology has to happen in order to keep us in touch. But, people keep getting better and better. It's like refined. An organization, a team may have a meeting every day at 9:00 or 9:30 where people check in and, like the 4 or 5 people that are working on a team kind of go over what they're doing. And then boom, they head out, they start working their day and they're doing it. Well, there's not like nearly as many interruptions. There's not, they're connecting on some type of a, inter office communication where they're, they're not necessarily emailing each other, but they're like doing that instant connection. There's all kinds of technology. That's a whole other separate story. Not worrying about that. But basically it became acceptable and people got used to the fact that they are on screen and they're talking. So in the beginning of this year, virtual meetings was kind of a fringe thing in a way. It was being used, but people, it wasn't really acceptable or accepted. And then the other thing that happened is that TV broadcast, the news and the morning shows, they're constantly interviewing people from their home. These people are at their home that used to come to the studio. Now they're being interviewed at home and we're experiencing the same kind of imperfections that we had or that we had when we were experiencing it, where like they freeze up, the screen freezes up, or the sound levels aren't quite right, or the echo chamber happens. And so anyway, I don't know that it's like 10 times better than it was, but it's certainly acceptable now. People are used to it, and then people are just more used to being on screen and talking and communicating. So that's kind of that's the mental shift. That's the thing that COVID brought us and said, oh my gosh. So anyway, here's my theory, and this is my thesis, is that we can use this medium and technology to tell a story, interview people within the organization. And I'm interviewing people, not today, but basically 3 or 4 to 5 times a week. Let's just say 4 times a week. I have a guest on, I'm interviewing them, and we're going through this process of using this technology. So the light bulb went off on my head, and I went, oh my gosh, why don't we, rather than try to get together, have a script, create some kind of a produced video that, tells us company story. We just interview people. We just have a conversation, and the people tell the story. So the first thing you need to do is you need to get used to the idea that we're going to now interview people, and that interviewing process is going to become and used for the story. Now you have to have a story in mind. You have to like, what is the story that we're going to tell? Now that's been going on. PR companies and marketing firms, they use that, advertising firms, they use this storytelling process the entire time, but they haven't used this virtual technology to it. So you take what they've been doing for the last, 50 to 75 years, and you basically just say, well, let's use virtual meeting technology to tell our stories. Let the people tell the story themselves. Let the actual people right on the ground. And it doesn't have to be perfect in terms of, it's like ordinary people. It's not like highly, super produced, perfection. It's just like the average people. So anyway, you have that, but you have to have the story in mind. And then you take the interviews, you have the interviews, you conduct them, and then you edit them. And you pull out the pertinent pieces. So there is a scripting that goes on, but the scripting is, kind of like a nebulous script, or it's like what's the ultimate goal here? And then you end up talking to people, and then they just say it, and then you pull out those brilliant little comments, and you kind of splice them together, and maybe you have a narrator, and so I say that having an interviewer is a very important piece of this puzzle, because you need someone to kind of the person, the glue that kind of holds the whole thing together, because you're interviewing multiple people, you're creating the story, and then then that same person who is the interviewer could act as the narrator, or fill in little gaps and pieces of it, that sort of thing. So it's basically an interviewing process, an editing process, and then distribution process of sharing that story. Now, what are some of the potential uses of these stories? Business development. Companies need to grow. They need to form new partnerships. They need to, have alliances, whether they be with potential new business partners, or getting, organizations to, buy into their particular product or their way of doing things. Business development isn't quite on the sales level. It's like, it's like kind of a step above in terms of putting together bigger deals. And so you can create what it is that your organization does, and who your leaders are, and what the vision of the organization is, and then tell that story in a way. And then you can share that with people who are potential partners. And, obviously what you want to do is you want to get them talking to you. So the idea of this story is to entice them enough to go, oh yeah, great. This can happen. I want to talk and learn more about these things. So that's business development. Sales on a local business, you can have the owner of the business, the key people who are doing whatever it is they're doing to keep things growing. The front desk person, the very first person that you meet when you walk into the business, you want them telling the story. And, so when they walk in, they already know who the people are and what the people do. And they'll feel more inclined to want to do business. So, these kinds of stories could be created. And that's like directly, benefiting the sales process. Culture building. Now, a little larger organization, especially one that's spread out across a geographic area where people don't necessarily get to know each other. They maybe know each other because they see things happening behind the scenes, like, names and this and that. But now you interview these people and you just get to know who they are and what they do. And, you have these short little segments and teams, you group groups of teams together, and, the people who have the same role within the organization. You might, if a company's spread out, you might have people doing a certain type of customer service job. Well, interview all 5 of those customer service people across, 5 different offices over 500 miles. And now that same story, kind of comes together for the organization and allows them to know it. And then you repeat that same process with all the other little groups of people within the organization. And so this is more of a culture building and camaraderie and having people feel pride in the organization that they work for. When new people come on board, it could be like an onboarding kind of a thing where, you have the, leadership welcome different people. You make it generic enough that it's not specific to one person, but it's like, here's what we do. And then, the different people within the organization introduce themselves and again, for welcoming a person on board. Same thing with recruiting. You could create that same kind of an idea into recruiting for, new people to join your organization. Employees are giving testimonials about why they like working for the company, and that will make other people feel more happy about coming and joining your company. Labor forces, people are out of work right at the moment, but the labor force market was very, very thin 1 year ago before COVID came along, and that's the actual but getting quality people, you always need quality people. So bringing them on board, letting your organization stick out above others, showing that you care about your people and that your people care about working there. So that's the idea of culture building. And then, you can even do it. And that was the culture building is really an internal audience, right? You're targeting your employees, and the business development and sales is more of an external focus where you're reaching out to business partners and customers, clients. And then, one other area would be like in the industry. How do you represent yourself within the industry? You can create branded stories that tell who you are, with the idea that, even though, you're somehow competitors, you're also, in alliance is in the sense that you're all working, serving the same types of people, and you're all just doing your thing, and you're helping to, the rising waters raises all ships. And so you want to be a leader within your industry. So you could do it for some of those types of things. All righty. Now, what are the key decisions that need to be made? The first thing is, what's the story or stories that you want to tell? And I say stories because you could have 3 or 4 different stories that you want to tell. And a skilled interviewer would be able to have the conversation with a person and get them to tell part of the story or get them to tell for story 1, and in the same virtual meeting, have them talk about story 2 and story 3 just by a series of different questions. And then that editing process will take the appropriate story and put it into, its right place. The other thing that could happen, and a good interviewer would be able to help with this, is that, you're just having a conversation with a person and the person's talking, and the interviewer can ask clarifying questions to, get them to be more specific and maybe get them to just sort of repeat a story in a slightly different way or in a more concise way. And again, the editing process can take care of that. You're not trying to do this like on a one-time, deal. It's a combination of getting the right sound bites to go along with, the story, the ultimate goal and the story in mind. You need to decide who's going to be interviewed. Obviously, the leadership is going to be interviewed, and they're going to cross over in most of these different stories. And then you're going to have other folks who might just be involved with one specific story. If it's maybe HR people are only involved in the internal culture building stories. And then, there might be certain types of people in the sales stories that you create that are, kind of specific to one particular product or one particular region. And then okay, so your first thing you decide is what stories you want to tell. You want to decide who's going to be interviewed. And the third thing is who's going to conduct the interviews, who's going to be the person. And you might have a person on board to do that. And I've discovered that that's something that I actually can do and will do for different organizations and I'm planning to do. So you need someone who, sees the big picture, and then you need someone who can focus on the details at the same time. And that would be the right person for interviewing. So an interviewer person, again, is someone who can see the big picture and focus in on the details simultaneously, because you don't want people rambling on and on. Maybe I'm rambling on a little bit and not exactly getting to the point here. So we'll just keep moving and pretend that I'm not rambling. All right. So then what's the process look like? You decide that you're going to do it, and you decide what the objectives are. What are the stories? And then you conduct the interviews, and then you edit it, and then you share the story. And, you have to decide where you're going to share the story and how you're going to share the story. It could just be a video that you host on your website, or it could be it's part of what I'm going to say, an LMS, a learning management system, LMS, learning management system. And basically that's just technology that allows you to create modules. And so you go to module A and you do an intro, and then you go to module B and it takes you, and it allows you to create the story. It's a learning management system. People use it to tell the story. And so that's really the best way, in my opinion, and the way that ultimately most of it goes. But, that introduction is just a simple video that maybe is on YouTube or housed on your website. All righty. So that's really the process. And then here's the beauty of this. Once it's made, once this thing is created, you don't have to create it. Well, you do, you'll end up updating it like in a couple of months or a year. You'll end up redoing everything because you'll refine it. But, you're building on what you already have. And the beauty of it is that it's scalable. Once this is created, once this video, once this little place, this learning management system, this little course or this little learning center area that a person can click on a link and go to and spend 15 minutes and get the whole idea and the story, it's very scalable. Then it becomes just a process of getting more and more people to see that and to view that. So, this is what advertising is all about, or marketing is, but it's really a matter of taking all of those things that we've been doing, but now just using this interviewing process virtually to get different people to tell their story. And why this is unique and different is that, people haven't done it for one thing, but the way it's been done is like you ended up with a whole script, and you ended up with a production crew and a team, and people were interviewed, and you had specific lines, and it was like essentially like making a movie, right? It was like more of a production that way. And this is more of a spontaneous, instantaneous thing that can just happen without a whole lot of planning and scripting and cameraman and lighting and all that. So and so there's like an opportunity to take this imperfect technology and now use it to to end up promoting your business, whether it be externally for business building or sales, or internally for culture building, and improve your business and keep it going. COVID is obviously going to come to an end. But the idea of virtual meeting and working from home and that genie is out of the bottle. This technology is now here to stay. And because of like mainstream media doing interviews with it, it suddenly is like acceptable way to do things. It's more authentic. It's more real than these highly produced, polished videos that were done in the past that cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make. And these things can be done for $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever, depending on how big of a project, 30 or 40,000, if you're interviewing hundreds of people, and then you have an editing team, it could still end up costing a few bucks, but it's going to cost a fraction of what it used to cost in terms of that before. So anyway, that's my idea. I just wanted to share that because I've been, thinking a lot about this, and I've been talking to people about it. And I just think that virtual meeting technology can be used for storytelling in a way that it hasn't been used. And because of all the things that have happened this year, the time is right for it. And it's a perfect time to jump on board with that sort of, marketing or sales or culture building processes that you can use within your company to make your company stronger and position it better as 2021 comes on board. Alrighty, so that's it. That's basically all I'm going to talk about today. Bettina says hello from Seattle. Thank you, Bettina. You're one of our most faithful followers. We really appreciate that. Tomorrow, Ed Barr, environmental services expert. Ed's primary interest is in sustainability and in environmental issues. And so we'll talk about some of those issues with him and some of his other interests. He's like me. He's got a lot of interest in a lot of different categories. So, we'll be able to talk for our 45 minutes without any trouble. Wednesday, Stacy Redfield, the author of The Pilates Effect. We're going to talk about the Pilates story. Started back in the, I'm forgetting the date, 1920s or 30s. And I think, and then how it exploded in the last 25 years. So in the mid 90s, it's like, boop, it took off, and yet it languished and was practically dead by the late 80s. So fascinating story. The Pilates Effect on Wednesday with Stacy Redfield, and then Brian Quinn, author of Crush Your Career. And he's written a book about his experience and as a person looking for a job, and then as a person who has done a lot of hiring over the last 5 years in his current role, and what he sees as the pitfall. So it's all about getting your resume together, getting your resume read, getting the interview from your resume, and then how do you go through the interview process, and then how do you end up, when you join an organization, make it a successful transition into that new organization for that first year. So it's all about your career. Crush Your Career is the name of the book. That is on Friday. And on Thursday, I'm planning to do a flashback Thursday, Thanksgiving edition of the Weber family history of Thanksgivings, what I grew up with. And if I can strong arm a relative or two to join me, they will be a guest. Otherwise, I'll do it on my own. All righty, that's what the week looks like. Have a great day, everybody. Look at that, 10:28, right at the bottom of the hour. I'm getting out of here in 30 minutes, just like I said. All right, everybody, have a great day. We will see you tomorrow with Ed Barr, environmental services expert. All righty, that's it. Have a great day, folks. Whoops, that's my Throwback Thursday theme song. That's not right. How about this one? The American Gumption, Spirituality Gone Wild closing theme. That's what I'm looking for. Have a great day, folks.